This is my coolant pressure kit. I actually got this one off of Amazon. It's pretty cheap, but it works extremely well. This tester is really similar to the one that we use at Mercedes. It's a pump style like that, and then it comes in bar and PSI. I really like it for that. And all of these test adapters work very well. Volkswagen caps go out, the O-ring on there can go out kind of often, or at least I've seen it enough times that I've ended up just having a cap on hand in there to do that. That's for the GM heater hose connectors. I toss them in as kind of an addition. If you've never taken those heater hoses off, basically the best thing to do is to not touch them unless you know you need to replace them because they're going to break. Fords are like that as well, and so those will remove them without any incidents of those breaking or having just a real tough time getting them out. The only thing this pressure kit did not do very well was actually the normal radiators on like a lot of American vehicles. So I had to go ahead and buy an extra coolant pressure test for just the basic ones that comes with this adapter, and it's held on directly onto that. I tried to put a chuck on here so that I could do them individually, but it wouldn't stop leaking. I couldn't get it figure out how to make that not happen, so I ended up just having to leave it how it was and then just use the adapters kind of accordingly. And then I also have my block testing equipment here too. These kits, I don't trust them as much. I don't think that they're like super reliable, but if there's one that's really obviously bad, I'll use that to originally test it. Like if I see smoke coming out of the exhaust and they came in with an overheat issue, that thing will catch it. But if it's a really light head gasket failure, I don't think that's going to catch it. I would rather use like a pressure transducer to measure, positive pressure inside of the cooling system or anything like that. I don't trust that for doing that. I would do some regular testing. But if you just need to add it onto a coolant pressure test kind of procedure, really good. That fluid's not very expensive and can provide an answer for you in a very quick way. But I like this dual chamber one because coolant will sometimes raise through that tube and then contaminate the fluid inside of it and change it to color. So that's not a good test. And so that dual chamber one, only the gases are coming up and changing the color of that fluid. So that's why I like that one. And then I just have this little holder that I just you can wrap it around stuff and kind of hold it. So useful for that. I think this is another pressure tester. I think this is maybe a fuel or I don't know. I think I had it for, I want to say exhaust back pressure tester because it has the quick coupling on there, or maybe for cooling systems. For some reason I needed to do that, but I just basically threw it in there because I didn't have a place to put it. This is kind of like a little power washing deal. If you don't have a power washer and you just need to spray something with water quickly, you can put this hose into the bottom of a little jug and then use compressed air through that and blow it out. I actually bought this by accident because I thought it was another tool that I think you can suck coolant out of something. Yeah, I thought it was a vacuum tool, and it was not a vacuum tool. It was a suction tool, so that's not really what I wanted. But I still kind of use it every once in a while. And then I have my fuel pump removal kits. And here I have that one, and then I have a universal one that attaches to everything. And these work really well. They're really nice, and they don't cost a lot of money. I think it was like $30 for both of them. And then I have my stethoscope here that I use kind of often. Then I kind of have my electrical stuff in here. Yeah, I put that note on there because this thing likes to just fly open and spill all my fuses. We have a box full of fuses in the shop cases, but I keep those in my box because I don't really want to have to walk all the way over there for fuses. And then that just has a bunch of office supplies in it, some extra Velcro ties, rubber bands, things like that. This is my gas analyzer, or my leak detection for AC leaks. Really good for evaporators if you want to stick it in somewhere. If you don't know, you can basically take the blower motor out of any car and stick a camera in there, or stick one of these and then pressurize the AC system and find leaks like that. So that's how I do that. I bought a Cornwall one that didn't exactly work as well. The Snap-on one has been the one that's been the most reliable at actually detecting stuff, and the settings on it are really good where it's not annoying. I have an extra one of these kits because they're extremely expensive. They don't make them anymore. So this kit I think is like $200 at this point. And I just kind of have some extra meter leads in here as well. My main kit is over in my roll card. But these clamp down, and then I just have some extra little pins for when I'm doing testing. I just kind of have them there to restock. And then if you haven't seen these, the tips of them are extremely sharp. And then they're threaded too, so you can attach stuff on the top. So a lot of my meter leads will have, you know, actually threaded connections on them so they don't fly off of stuff. And I think these are probing wires, so you can stick those onto the wire, attach one of these. Really useful if you're like powering a circuit and then closing the hood to go do a test drive to test something. That's good. Or if you need to take some measurements on a vehicle and you don't want these to come off, that's the only time where I'm really acceptable, or where really I'm comfortable with puncturing a wire, is if I'm needing to do some testing while on a test drive and I don't need that wire to come off at all. That's the time where I'll actually puncture a wire. But otherwise, I like doing back probe testing, like at the connector, or using an amp clamp or something. I don't really like poking wires unless I need to. Or if you do, at least use some of that rubberized kind of stuff in there to, you know, make sure nothing's damaged. Some retractable leads. I don't use these a whole lot. My meter is Bluetooth, so I tend to not need to do testing that needs to reach that far. But I think occasionally I've used it because a battery was in the trunk and I was doing a relative compression test in there. But then I also needed to get injector or ignition coil measurements to do a comparison against that. So I use these to kind of do that testing. This is a decade box, really useful for airbag repairs if you need to test a system. Basically, if you can get a specification for the airbag, you can input that specific resistance as a substitute and see what the computer says. And if the computer says the circuit's okay, then you know that the airbag was bad. So that's a really useful thing. This goes on the end of, I think, BMW gas caps. So you just pop it on the end, and then you can stick the hose in there if you're doing evap testing. Pretty useful. This is an anti-static mat if I ever get new computer modules and I need to install some stuff on there. Really useful for the Mercedes conductor plates whenever we were doing them there. That's the kit that I used to make sure that no additional, like, this wire doesn't work. I'm actually going to probably toss that. I was going to use the ends of the connectors to put onto something, but I don't know. It's mostly trash, so I'm probably just going to toss it in the trash. These are really useful if you're doing smoke testing. You can just stick them in the intake and then inflate the bladder, and these will expand to like really giant balls and hold that onto there, and then you can stick the smoke test on the end of that. And really useful. I have two of them. One of them leaks a little bit, but it's more on the front, like way over here. So I can still stick it into a place. I just put that on there so if people are using them, like, use the good one. Don't use that one unless you know where you're putting it. And then of course the BMW crankcase test cap. Yeah, that's really needed, necessary if it were going to BMWs and you need to confirm a valve cover is bad. That's going to be the best way to do that. I guess I'm doing a little cleanup here as well. That's that spilling fuses box. I'm telling you. All right, here we have a terminal pin removal kit. Like I said, do a lot of electrical repairs, so that one I tend to just put them all in this kit. And I'm probably going to haul this out so they fit correctly, but every single one of them I need to is in here. So I just bring that with me whenever I'm needing to take any pins out of connectors. Really useful too, because we keep all of our old harnesses that we replace, and we strip them down and keep the connectors on that. This is basically a universal kit that you can use for testing. So you put that on the end of your meter leads, and you can do some testing like that. Also great for power probes if you want to use power something manually. There's no better way than actually clipping right onto the pin. This is my my meter kit. Another haul out case that I just use for that. This is a snap-on Bluetooth multimeter. Works really well. My only complaint about it is it tends to want to turn off really quickly. I think after like 5 or 10 minutes or something. I'm not really sure how long it is, but it's pretty short. It'll start beeping to tell you to turn it back on because it's about to shut off on its own. And the battery life is not excellent, so it shuts off pretty frequently, and the battery life isn't that good. I'll have to replace the battery probably every, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months or so. where my fluke meters tended to work a lot longer. But the screen's really clear. The Bluetooth function is awesome, so when I'm just testing stuff like underneath the car, I need somebody on the top to see it, or I'm in the back or something like that. Really useful. But most of the time I actually just use my scope as my multimeter, my Zeus, so I don't tend to use that unless I'm just doing some really quick testing. And then I've just got some extra little clamps in here and meter leads and things like that. And then I have 4 of these because I tend to use my scope a lot and I like to have as many leads as possible. Then I have my power probe, which I made a really small modification on. This clamp, I ran it over the little alligator clip, so when I went to replace it, I actually put a banana jack on it so that I could attach it to these perfectly fine as a ground. And so I can put pins in them, so basically I can put a really good connection wherever I want. And then these are those leads that I was talking about earlier that I like using for really great for ground connections, because you can clamp these on and then screw them into there so they're not going to fall out of your meter or fall out of the connection that you put it on, like the battery or wherever. So really useful. I like that meter kit. I use it a lot. Super fantastic. This is for measuring the VLOM systems on GM vehicles. Once you have the VLOM out, which is really the only way to test it, you use this kit that's actually from GM, and you can manually actuate them and then put air pressure in there to see if they're actually turning on and off like they're supposed to. I think this kit is like 80 to 100 bucks on eBay. You can get them more expensive than that if you don't want to look around for a little bit, but it's pretty useful. You can definitely tell a bad one, although I've never tried it on a new one because I'm afraid I'll mess it up, so I don't do that. That one actually has my Snap-on has their own like Power Pro thing. I think it's like a multi-probe tester is what they call it. But mine, I bought it from a coworker, and he said it was brand new, and it ended up not working at all. So it's still being repaired by Snap-on. And every time I ask him about it, he's like, "I don't know where it's at," and that worries me a little bit. But eventually, I might just end up getting a new one and telling him like, "Hey, that one is yours. You're gonna have to basically take that one in as a trade-in because I haven't gotten it back for probably like 3 or 4 months," which is absolutely ridiculous. This is the goodie room. Got a lot of my electrical test equipment. It used to be more organized, but I've thrown more things in here since the last time that I used it. Pretty much every couple of months it gets a new addition to it, and I just need to do that. This has any electrical test equipment that I need that is not standard stuff. So here I have a relay tester. I tend to replace relays with components anyway if it ends up not being something that's I don't trust relays a whole lot if I'm replacing fuse boxes or components, so I'll tend to replace them anyway. But this is a good way just to test and make sure that the relay isn't bad. It'll actuate it a bunch of times, and I guess has its own program inside that lets it know what's up. I have an amp clamp in here. I have a breakout box that I use for a lot of CAN testing. A lot of times too, customers will bring their vehicle in for diagnosis, and the OBD port doesn't work. So a lot of times I'll just plug that in and supply my own power or ground signal into it just to get the vehicle talking. And then I'll go ahead and do the diagnosis and then tell the customer that it'll be an additional like hour diag for me to go and see what's wrong with the network and why the OBD port is not working. But that is just so I can go ahead and continue testing while we make the estimate. A remote starter, I use that every once in a while to turn things on and off. Usually not the starter, but whatever. This is a Load Pro lead set. A lot of times I like using just an incandescent light to do voltage drop tests. But this has its own little like half amp load that it'll put on there so you can load test the circuit. I like using it for regular load testing. It also has these leads on it that make it compatible with my other leads, which is nice. I have a regular, like I said, I like using a test light for load testing, but then I have, this is for spark plug wires. Basically, if you're working on an older system, like a distributor system, that's good for getting waveforms off of it, just to compare them next to each other. And I have a couple of them so that I can plug more than one in at once and kind of compare two right side by side. There's a trailer brake tester. This is an OBD port that plugs straight into, it just has wire sticking on the end. So I can attach my own connections on there if I need to do some further testing on it. Or if I want to do like a relative compression test, you can plug that straight into there and just get a measurement right off the bat if you don't want to go to the battery like it's a truck or something. Pretty useful for that. This you're supposed to put around some GM vehicles, like the ignition switch on there, to see if it's got a signal, but I've never seen it light up even on vehicles that were working, so not sure if maybe I'm using it wrong or maybe it's a tool that doesn't actually do anything. These are just some extra meter leads that I don't really ever use. Then I have some temperature probe stuff in here, which again really doesn't ever get used. But like I said, this is just my extra electrical kit that keeps things that are not common, things that I'll actually put that back together at some point. Then we'll go over my locker and we'll kind of end this this little tour, and we'll go over the rest of the thing at some other point because it's getting a little late today. Yeah, so in my locker I have my my little Mac light that I bought. I bought that originally as a replacement for some of my other flat lights, but it has its own proprietary charger, and I really just don't have any use for a tool that has its own specific charger, so I put it in here just kind of as a light. We have like 50 cameras or something like that set up all around the shop, so I use that to, that's basically to review over any of the stuff. Like if somebody ran into a car, or somebody, you know, we don't know where some keys are because somebody maybe lost them, we'll basically use that to see who was the last person that drove it. Really useful for finding keys because we can just kind of follow the person all around the shop and end up seeing what they did. And a lot of times they'll just end up like, we found somebody had set them on top of a vehicle and then walked off, and then we checked on top of that vehicle and it was still there. So it was really good that they didn't drive off, but really useful for that. Got a first aid kit if I'm going to grabbing some drinks for somebody or some lunch. I'll use that little drink holder to put in my car, a little paper towel holder. This is for our fuel injection cleaning systems, or I think our intake cleaning systems. I don't really sell a lot of those. They're not really something that I'm like a super huge believer in. I do think they work, but I think they're more as a maintenance item and not something to repair stuff. And my goal typically is to repair a vehicle that walked in, not do some maintenance when they have like 50 other things they need to fix. So I tend to not use that a whole lot, but I have my own personal one in case I do. That one's just kind of like a little grooming kit, and it's got some like hand sanitizer, a toothbrush, things like that in case I forget to, or I'm running late or something like that. Some extra gloves. I got some snacks up here. Got some Mexican hot Cheetos, which are really good. If you've never had these, they're really awesome. They're kind of tangy. They're cheesy. I think they're made with corn. Yeah, so they're a little different. If you're a big Hot Cheetos fan, that's something you like. Got some swag from Strands. I got some extra. These are just my batteries that I use on my little tools all the time, and they've got magnetic bases on them. All my tools have magnetic bases except for the big ones. And then I got an extra one because a lot of them are starting to kind of crack on the center right here, and they might eventually end up breaking completely. And I don't know if they have any kind of warranty, but I don't want to be in a situation where I can't warranty them, so I just have some extras up here. Yeah, and here I just kind of have some a lot of extra cables in case I need to replace one of the ones up here that quits working, because that happens frequently. I have 2 cases of these screen protectors for my phone. I go through screen protectors so often that I just keep them here in stock. Some extra cable that I'm using for rewrapping harnesses if we don't have any in the shop. I have my own personal ones so that I can use those. Another magnifying glass with the soldering stuff. That's where I keep all my wireless batteries. I replaced my little charger with my big one that does both of them. So this one I'm just kind of keeping here until I figure out some way to sell it. But I threw my name on it, so that's why I couldn't trade it in. And then I've got a connector from my car that ended up not fitting because it was too big. Same connector, just too big of a version. Got an extra one of these timers in case one of those breaks, some batteries, some brake clean. This case doesn't have anything in it, my old plates. Then I've got some extra Milwaukee batteries. Oh, this is pretty useful. I use this to keep my my laptop charged, or the shop laptop charged when I'm programming a car. I don't want to plug it into the cigarette lighter and possibly cause a load in the system that might create an issue, so I like using that to do that. Also, if I need to charge my phone, these big batteries last a really long time to do that, so keep that in there. This I broke because I threw it because I was mad at it because it wouldn't light up, and then I broke it for good, so that's in there. Hopefully one day, I'm thinking, I guess that I'll fix it at some point. Got my vacuum gauge in here. I use this pretty often. And then I also threw this this power steering system. Basically, I use this to bleed the power steering system. And this jar is just there to catch any extra fluid so it doesn't go actually in my tool. But other than that, no big, nothing exciting there. I think everybody owns one of these. This just has some extra fluids in it. I think some greases and stuff. Yeah. Man, these are all probably trash, but I'm just going to keep them in there. I guess just spares. This is just some Mercedes grease. I think this is wheel bearing grease. Yeah, bearing grease, shock absorber grease. You can put this at the top of the boots, and it'll cause them to leak like less often. Or strut mounts and stuff like that. You can put that on the top of there. It gets rid of a lot of big noises. This is another tube of grease, and then this is some electrical contact grease. I got this actually recommended during a repair at Mercedes. And if you've ever heard of like Stabilant 22, it's basically a type of electrical contact grease that you can put on there. And I believe this is like $60 for this little tube. Put it on the end of pins with that little paintbrush, and you can get a better electrical connection. Supposedly, I've never seen any significant improvements, but I'd have to assume Mercedes made it for a reason, so I just kind of keep it in here as extra fluid that maybe be needed one day. If you're seeing a lot of these boxes, these have a lifetime warranty through Snap-on. I don't know if they still have that, but they did when I bought it, and I think I'm on like number 6. They're not the most reliable thing. They probably go out every year, but the most common part that failed was this hose, but they added a plastic piece to it, which seems to have kept my last one working for about like 3 years. I have a little jack here that I use if I'm working on the alignment machine, I need to jack part of the vehicle up. I'll do that to kind of like press stuff in or whatever. Really useful. I just kind of keep it in here as a useful thing. And then a bearing packer, which I don't think I've had to work on a bearing that needed that in a real long time, so I just kept that on there. The one we had in the shop doesn't work very well. It's also all dirty, and I don't like dirty things mixing with grease because that doesn't make any sense. I got some extra magnetic pads on there that I might need for other stuff. On my door here, I've just got a kind of a bunch of stuff. My safety glasses graveyard. Once they're all completely scratched up and I can't use them, I guess I just put them up here for decoration because they're not useful. I still have earplugs on these. They come out of that end, and then you use this little slide here to retract them back into your safety glasses. But I still use them for earplugs, so that's just kind of where I keep them at this point. Some extra battery cleaning fluid, microfiber towels, extra brake grease. And then I used to have some jars up here. I need to get more jars and put them in here, but I use them for fluid samples. Right now I'm using this one for fluid samples, but it's so tiny, and it's got that kind of fogged glass appearance, or fogged plastic, so I don't want to put things like fuel or diesel inside of that. So I end up using a water bottle, which is a big no, because somebody might think it's a drink and do that. This is for the toolbox to keep it clean, some cleaning wax. I have my own coffee creamer and sugar because the one in the lounge, if it ever runs out, I can't really drink coffee without that. Some hand sanitizer. This is some really, really good upholstery cleaner. Ford, I think, did a great job making some stuff. This doesn't leave a lot of those little like round ridge things whenever you're cleaning it. It tends to do it all evenly, so really good stuff. Expensive, I think it's like 22 bucks, but works extremely well. I actually got that as a repair for Toyota. Has a TSB for one of their trucks. The rear light that goes on the back window, it ends up leaking and getting on the rear headliner and getting everything all wet. So this is what you use to clean the seats and the headliner, and it's apparently supposed to do a really great job, and I did. And I still have like a 70% of the can left, so kept it. This is just some spray adhesive. I think, I thought 3M made this, but I use that for the fabrics inside of vehicles. If it's falling down and kind of drooping, you can use that to reattach it. Also really useful for these mats. I didn't do that on this toolbox, but you can spray it down and put that in there, especially for like roll carts where you know things are going to be moving around often. And if you end up taking these off, you're just going to end up peeling them off anyway. So that works really well. And then I just have some extra, I think I have a couple cans of butane in here. This stuff's really useful. It's called Osmium. I use them anytime I'm doing like HVAC housings. Like I'm taking them out to remove the evaporator core. I'll basically like clean the evaporator core with some soapy water and spray it off, and then put this on there basically to kind of kill any bacteria and kind of keep it giving like almost like a new car smell inside of there. But mostly it's used to just kind of sanitize it and keep it in there. There's a Mexican taco place down the street. Makes really awesome tacos, but sometimes they don't add any salt to it, so I threw some of that in there, and I have got some limes in my my little mini fridge over there. And then we get a lot of coasters and cup holders and things like that from our vendors, so I just kind of throw them in there whenever we get them. Some extra bungee cables. Use that for cleaning like injector ports. Then I have a universal dipstick tool here. And I used to have a Mercedes one as well, but it's in the back now for with our transmission rebuilder. Or maybe this one's a Mercedes one. Yeah, this is the Mercedes one. So our transmission rebuilder has a universal dipstick that comes with like a fluid application chart, and it has like a millimeter measurement on the bottom that you use to measure how much fluid you need. And this is really used for cleaning like sunroof drains. You can just stick that in there and basically run through the whole thing, and then blow some like cleaning solution and get that completely clean. I don't use this a whole lot. I actually just have it on here kind of because I got it at Toyota, and it's still useful if you're having a hard time visualizing what the AC system looks like and all the parts inside of it. This is good to kind of give you a good overview, so you can kind of think about how the fluid's moving in there, and then look at the gauges and kind of figure out what's going on. That's really useful. I haven't had to use that in a while, but I still keep it up here because it's just kind of a decoration. Yeah, then I've got a gauge here that I use for, it used to go on one of my fluid pressure gauges until I got a good kit, and I just kind of keep a lot of supplies in here like blades, some Scotch-Brite pads, some extra silicone. These are some U-joint removal tools. They work really, really well. They're extremely expensive, but they're fucking fantastic. I love them. Got a bag of bags, some extra fuses and extra electrical things in there. I think it's mostly for big fuses. Got a timing tool in here that didn't fit in that big drawer, so I just kind of tossed it in there. This, I believe, is for welding. I found it underneath a vehicle like that was being scrapped, and so I kept it, and it basically keeps it at whatever angle you put it at, so you can weld it. Another pack of these heat shrink solder connectors, so I never run out. Some extra screen protectors for my Zeus. I think I've got like 3 or 4 in there. These, depending on your Snap-on dealer, if you have a good relationship, they'll give them to you a lot cheaper, but I think they can be almost $80. So you got to be careful when you're ordering these, not to overdo it. And then I basically have this master crank pulley set. I think I got it from Mac. Works pretty well. Just I don't use it a whole lot. I tend to use a lot of specialty tools to get them out, so I don't tend to use that quite as much as I used to. But it's still pretty useful. And then the installer tools are the ones I use more often. Those two, I use them interchangeably. They've got some different sizes and kind of functions on how they do it. And I think actually I got these on a 2-for-1 deal, so I bought this one and I got that one for free. But it's pretty useful. This is for, I believe, like Dodge vehicles. Yeah, it's for Dodge crank seal removers, I believe. I don't remember exactly. I bought it for that, and then we ended up not having to do the job. Got some injector removal tools for GM. This used to be my brake pad spreader, but then I used it for, I think, like it's like a GM alternator. It's got a really big tensioner on there that you need to squeeze with their proprietary tool, and instead I used that. And that worked, but it worked once, and then I believe it broke it. So I should probably just toss that out. Got just a bunch of variety of valve spring compressing tools, a 3-jaw puller. I mostly use the air hammer version of that. I think that's another removal tool. Another removal tool. Just so many valve core removal tools. I've got extra bolts here for vehicles. I think this one's like for a Ford. And then some of these I have for like Volkswagen and Mini Cooper. It's basically just to start the process of getting that crankshaft pulley onto there. And then I can use the actual bolt, because a lot of them can sometimes be specific torque, and then they're a one-time use. So I don't like to reuse them. If it ever tells me that I need to replace it, I just do that. This is rotating the crankshaft on like I think 5.9 Cummins vehicles. Got that puller for wheel bearings or wheel hubs. And then what is that? Oh, I guess that goes to my air hammer, and I guess I just didn't use it enough because it's in here. I don't actually redo engines, the pistons on there. I bought a table that was an engine, and all the cylinders were all rusty, so I use this to clean them back up. This is a Honda crankshaft bolt removal tool. It's really thick, and it works extremely well. Gets them off really, really quickly. If you ever try to get one of those off without that, it's a hard deal. I think this is for Subarus or some type of specialty. This actually might be for Hondas. But anyway, you stick it in the crankshaft and you can rotate it and get that off. This is an injector removal tool for Range Rovers. They're in a pretty weird spot, so that's kind of the only angle that'll fit on there. And what's kind of funny is I made a special adapter here, so I could attach it to my air hammer and just yank them out real fast, and it works really, really well. But that can get a little sketchy. I'm afraid that thing's gonna break if I keep using it like that. And then a GM oil pump alignment tool. So if you're doing a lot of the oil pump removals on some of the newer GM engines, you need that to align it back up. Or you can just mark it before you remove it, which is good. This I think just has some air blower tools. Yeah, for the air blower I have up there, these are all the attachments for it, and I really don't use any of them. Just the little bendy one works so well that I haven't had to use that for anything. This is my old air blower that I used to use. I still have it in here in case somebody needs to borrow one, and I don't want them using mine, or in case mine happens to break, I've got an extra one here while that one's getting fixed. This is my refractometer, basically just used to measure DEF fluid. You can also use it to measure coolant if you want to, but I just keep that in here because it's not really ever used. These just have extra Torx bits and e-Torx bits. I replaced my old set with some new ones, and so I tossed all my old ones that were still not broken or not old inside of here, and my new ones are sitting up there. And then that's extra set of Torx bits and e-Torx bits again. Same deal. Once I bought some new ones, I just threw the old ones into a case and just use that to restock. Some Torx sticks, which I don't use here. I just tend to torque with my torque wrench, because a lot of the times I'm not really, I just don't really trust Torx sticks, unless you're doing like a lot of quick services and stuff like that. That's here in case one of our lube techs ends up needing to remove and install a bunch of wheels for some reason, but otherwise they're just kind of there because I thought I would need them and ended up not using them. This is a bunch of my ratchet straps. This was my old multimeter before I had my snap-on one. That's still working, and I have it here as a backup in case my snap-on battery dies and I don't have any extra batteries. It's there. I have my heat gun that I lent to somebody, and they left it there and then went outside to go grab another car, and then it melted. But it still functioned correctly, but he gave me $20 to replace it, and it still works, so I just kept the 20 bucks. I don't know what I use this for. I think I use it for bolts. I just toss them in there if I need to clean them. I have some fluid solution in that or some oil. And then that just has a bag of random crap. At least it's kind of organized. And this is for bleeding master cylinders. Bench bleeding them, you can just get all the adapters and put them in there. And then I have a little pocket scanner, which will never see the light of day because I don't use that for anything. I kind of only want to use a big scanner, or only use a scanner that's appropriate for that use. So that's kind of just a tour of the area that I use for my day-to-day purposes. Pretty much that's my main work area, is this little section, but the rest of it does have a lot of other stuff that it's pretty useful. So we'll go over that at some other time, but yeah, that's so far the tour of my big toolbox.